Number 5. The Conjuring. The Conjuring is a 2013 horror film directed by James Wan, written by Chad and Carrie Hayes. It is the first film in the Conjuring universe franchise and also based on real events surrounding the Perron family's demonic experiences. Ed was a World War II vet and a former police officer who became a self-professed demonologist. Lorainne, a self-claimed clairvoyant, making them the best demonic duo out there. In 1952, Ed and Lorainne founded the New England Society for Psychic Research. They quickly gained notoriety as respected investigators after this case. The Perrons. In 1971, the Perron family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Rhode Island where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice odd things happening almost immediately. First, missing items, salt shaker, broom, then some ghostly sightings. Then, well, you'll see. It was discovered that the home had experienced some previous sinister owners, self-immolation, deadly accidents, and of course, murder in the attic. One violent and destructive spirit named Bathsheba. Quote, whoever the spirit was, she perceived herself to be the mistress of this house, and she resented the competition of my mother posed for that position. Andrea Perron, the oldest daughter. Bathsheba Sherman, who lived on the Perrons' property circa 1800s, was rumored to have been a Satanist and involved in the murder of a neighbor. According to the oldest daughter, Andrea, there were numerous spirits that lived on the premises. The smell of rotten meat, beds levitating, and of course, the dirt-covered, abysmally cold basement. The Perrons asked the Warrens to come in more than 10 separate times on 10 separate occasions to help out their ghost problem. Lorainne conducted a seance to attempt to contact the spirits that were possessing them, to which during the seance Carolyn Perron was possessed. The family swear that she was speaking in tongues and even rising from the ground, sitting in a chair. Andrea said, my mother began to speak a language not of this world in a voice not of her own. Then her chair levitated and she was thrown across the room. Yeah, that's all the ingredients you need for an amazing horror movie universe to me. Terrifying. Number 4. Annabelle. The infamous Annabelle. We know her. The most haunted doll on Earth. First appearing in The Conjuring in 2013, then Annabelle Creation, then Annabelle Comes Home. I'm just waiting for part 4. Annabelle vs. Anderson Silva, UFC 279 live from Las Vegas. Yo, I'm straight up punting a haunted doll if it runs up on me, I'll tell you that for free. The film was inspired by the story of a doll named Annabelle, told by Ed and Lorainne Warren after obtaining and ridding its evil from its toy-like body. The doll is apparently responsible for 2 near-death experiences, 1 fatal accident, and a string of demonic activity. The doll's origins come from a gift to a young nurse named Donna from her mother for her 28th birthday. Donna brought it back to her apartment she shared with a roommate. Pretty normal Raggedy Ann doll. Then the two began to notice she'd move around on her own. They even started finding notes left around saying, "Help me," written on parchment paper, which they had no clue to even where to buy that or find that. Before long, they called in some help from a medium who insisted that the doll was harboring a spirit who had lived and perished on the grounds prior to their building being built. Medium called the priest called his father called Ed and Lorainne. So yeah, this thing is like haunted. You know when priests are like, oh God, no! Yeah, that's usually not a really good sign. Spirits do not possess inanimate objects like houses or toys. They possess people. An inhuman spirit can attach itself to a place or object, and this is what occurred in the Annabelle case. This spirit manipulated the doll and created the illusion of it being alive in order to get recognition. Truly, the spirit was not looking to stay attached to the doll, it was looking to possess a human host. Thank the gods, Ed and Lorainne locked her up in the occult museum where she lays to this day. Just waiting. Number 3. The Haunting in Connecticut. The Haunting in Connecticut is the first of the Warren universe of horror and is based on all real cases and points. A 2009 gem, it accounts the horrific paranormal case of the Snedekers, who moved into a ghost-infested house in Southington, Connecticut. Carmen and Alan Snedeker, their 3 sons, their daughter, and 2 nieces, all unwillingly now pray for the other side. The eldest Snedeker son unfortunately was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the family moved to Connecticut to be closer to the doctors. What they weren't initially aware of was that the home they were renting was once a funeral parlor. Yeah, tools and bloody furniture just lay as they once did, untouched. Mom notices items going missing. That's just the start. The children start to see strange people in their home at night, specifically a man with long black hair. Their son's drastic personality change, which included violent outbursts and attacks on his family, was then diagnosed with schizophrenia. No one was convinced, though. It was agreed that maybe he was becoming a victim to the house's grim history after all. After weeks in the home to get the full demonic experience, the Warrens came to the conclusion that the morticians that worked on the home previously had practiced some abysmally sinister acts on the lifeless bodies, deepening the home in a twisted, dark origin. After Ed and Lorainne were called in to clean it up, an exorcism or two, and the house finally became a home again. The case can be reimagined in 2009's Haunting in Connecticut, where the story follows the truth the Snedekers experienced all those years ago. It's pretty scary, yeah. Number 2, The Nun, the 2018 spin-off film and prequel to The Conjuring 2. A demon nun channeling an evil spirit named Valak. The Nun serves as an origin story of sorts within the Warren universe. Sister Irene and priest Father Burke travel to investigate a monastery in 1952 Romania after the Vatican learns of an accident and summons the father to investigate. According to the Lesser Key of Solomon from the 17th century, Valak is the Grand President of Hell. Valak's look in both films were inspired by an experience Lorainne had shortly after investigating the Amityville horror house in 1976. Lorainne was at home in her bed reading when she felt a presence. She saw a black whirlwind of dark mass enter the room. It was like a vortex. Lorainne prayed to be released from the forces of evil. She told it, "Leave and go back where you came from," over and over again. It vanished, but she never forgot. And cue scary movie. Yeah, apparently while investigating the once very haunted Borley Rectory, the most haunted spot in the UK, Lorainne had a run-in with a sinister nun. They ended up coming face to face with the churchyard's ghost, who was, according to lore, a nun buried alive behind the brick walls of the convent centuries ago after having an affair. Apparently Ed took photos on his camera of the Borley Rectory ghosts as they encountered them. Quote, "It was pitch black and there were no lit candles or lights. Photographers snapped photos on a 35mm camera with infrared film. When they developed the images, what appeared to be a spectral nun was seen walking down the aisle praying." And number 1, Part 2, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Sounds like a lame Satanist excuse, doesn't it? Actually, now a term of phrase pleaded before a court of law. Yeah, who knew? Could possession under demonic circumstances prove innocence over acts performed while under? This is the 8th installment of the Conjuring universe. The plot is as follows. It's 1981. Ed and Lorainne documented the exorcism of 8-year-old David Glatzel, attended by his family, his sister Debbie, her boyfriend Arn Johnson, and Father Gordon of Connecticut. During the exorcism, Arn invites the demon to enter his body instead of remaining in the boy's. The family, including the Warrens, witnessed the demon transport itself from David's body to Arn's body while he suffers from a heart attack and is taken to the hospital unconscious. Arn and Debbie return home, but Arn is left feeling a little unwell and eventually ends up murdering his landlord, stabbing him 22 times due to this demonic possession. Yeah, sounds pretty terrifying, doesn't it? His case becomes the first American murder trial to claim demonic possession as a defense. Well, sorry to break it to you, but this is literally a play-by-play of the events that actually happened. Yeah. Maybe not shot for shot, movie style, but the script and skeleton was there for sure. Arn was subsequently convicted after a messy murder trial, though he served only 5 years of a 10 to 20 year sentence. The case was huge. It attracted huge media attention and in fact was the first in history of the US claiming the paranormal as a defense. The couple went on to marry each other, and tell their story as the Warrens side as well. Books, documentaries, and eventually this huge film universe. Yo, all of this just got way more scary, right? Like, I gotta rewatch all 8 parts. Who am I kidding? I'm not gonna watch them. I watch horror movies like this, you know? Number 5, Amityville. Believe it or not, there's actually 39 film adaptations made surrounding this case. Yeah, it's the OG case. The first crack at getting this terrifying formula down that we all love today. The Amityville Horror. Yes, the infamous haunting that took place on November 13th, 1974 at 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York. Well, in some versions, 108 Ocean Avenue. Places like that get really popular, you know? The Amityville Horror is a book by American author Jay Anson, published 1977, and it's also the basis of one of the scariest movies ever released from 1979 onwards. The paranormal experiences by the Lutz family has just led to great movies, you know? Spooky stories. It unfortunately has also led to controversy, lawsuits, name defacing, and of course murders and life sentences. But that was before all the media stuff. Hey, it was gruesome times. The LA Times said it was actually more hideously frightening than The Exorcist because it actually happened. DeFeo was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 6 life sentences. All of his parole appeals have been denied. For nearly 13 months after the murders, the house remained empty until it was bought by the Lutz family. And cue terrifying movie. When the Lutzes moved in, the furniture from the DeFeo family remained intact from the night of the murders. Yeah, they actually didn't know. They just thought it came furnished. That's a ripoff also, I'd be pissed. New couch smell? Nope, just ghost plasma. Yuck. The Warrens' most famous case was the Amityville haunting. This is where 6 members of the DeFeo family were found dead in their beds in 1974. A year later, the Lutzes moved in, and 28 days of this, basically. Also, let us know in the comments down below which Ed and Lorainne case scares the bejesus out of you the most. Like, which movie won't you watch, you know? I don't do dolls, dude. Annabelle gets me every time, I swear to God. Number 4, The Haunted. In 1991, the works of the late great Warrens was finally approached again after years of their demonic work had slowly and surely began to surface. They began fighting the good fight since the 40s, remember? With the success of the Amityville horror in the late 70s and the popularity it brought to the demonology topic within the US, the Warrens' name and reputation was finally appreciated, and they gifted us another gem of a story to film. This 2-hour, made-for-TV film based on the horrific events that took place within the Smurl home in the 80s. The Haunted, released by 20th Century Fox, earned itself 2 Golden Globe nominations. The case file of the Smurls' haunted house in Pennsylvania in the 1970s was infamous for not only demons, but a certain type of evil entity, the incubus and the succubus. This demonic pair usually haunts a sleeping person, and their possession is usually based around a more explicit manner of haunting. Yeah, Google it up, you'll get it. This film does a semi-tasteful 90s job at expressing what the Smurls were actually working with. Spoiler alert, it's pretty messed up. Demons almost quote-unquote breeding with those it possesses. The Smurls' version of their story was the subject of a 1986 paperback book titled The Haunted, of course, where this movie of the same name gets its inspiration from. The Warrens are introduced and explored for the first time in this film. Like many of the film adaptations, the Warrens are first seen performing college lectures into various hauntings. Lorainne is portrayed by Diane Baker. Ed is played by Stephen Markle. A pretty 90s feel to it, you know? Grainy, it's a little campy at times, but it's the first formula to this huge film franchise. Isn't it cool that Ed and Lorainne have been part of the modern horror scene for like 70 years? Their cases have been a part of the horror landscape way before Wan developed his Conjuring universe. Whether you believe in these cases or not, it's clear that they've made an impact. Number 3, Bill Ramsey. Okay, so these Warrens have covered it all. Ghosts, demons, succubuses, even vampires. I'd love to see a good vampire movie, you know? Just Juan takes it into his universe. I'd love to see it. But werewolves? Like, for real? No way. In the 80s, they were fascinated with this werewolf legend, so Lorainne and Ed Warren traveled across the world in search of a real-life wolf man. They watched a television program, Sightings, in which police officer and locals got interviewed about their encounters with a local werewolf, Bill Ramsey, in London, England. Bill himself was questioned about his abilities to take on men twice his size with ease, as he would rampage through the city, blacking out. Lorainne felt a strange connection to him after this, and after a short trip to London, she found Bill Ramsey's whereabouts. Through British police departments, Lorainne made contact. Lorainne and Ed discovered that unlike most werewolf folklore, he does not change physically every moon, or it wasn't a bite that originally caused him to transform. Bill Ramsey, according to Lorainne, was possessed by an evil wolf spirit and needed help with a full-blown exorcism. The Warrens brought Bill back to Connecticut to meet Bishop Robert McKenna of Our Lady of the Rosary Catholic Church, and he agreed to perform an exorcism for Bill. The exorcism was a success, and thanks to everyone, today Bill lives a pretty normal life. I'd hope so. This is terrifying. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, if that came to theaters, it would probably slap and horrify at the same time. Good problems, you know? Number 2, Japan tour. In the mid-1990s, Ed and Lorainne found themselves overseas in Japan, visiting Nagoya and Tokyo with a team of translators for a small tour of where Ed was stationed in World War II. And of course, some hauntingly terrifying demonic run-ins. First day, they went to see these haunted tunnels. Second day, they have haunted house run-ins with headless samurai. And thirdly, they witness and help out with a full-blown exorcism. Yeah, talk about a busy week. It's like a Warren 3-in-1 package deal. Their first day consisted of visiting a set of condo buildings apparently riddled with a ghost infestation. Beheaded samurai soldiers haunt the hallways, a ghostly couple and the woman ghost of the gallows haunt the premises. The second night, they visited a haunted salt mine tunnel. Ed said it was the scariest place he had ever been to. The tunnel had buried some odd 200 people alive when an avalanche caved miners in. Ouch. The third night consisted of this. That's right, a very, very unsettling, real exorcism. Okay, yeah, I'm not sleeping tonight at all. The Warrens sat in on 3 high priests of knowledge and spirituality known as disciples as they watched an apparent snake demon slither its way out of a person before their very eyes. And of course, this footage of a young woman speaking in not her first language, but tongues. Just moaning in agony. It's kind of hard to watch all that demonicness. Spooky level? 10 out of 10, 100%. And the number 1 spot, Maurice Theroux. And we come to Maurice. This one is terrifying on its own. It doesn't need a 3D movie follow-up. Maurice Theroux began to notice young. He was able to do things that no other man is capable of. Superhuman strength, knowledge of more than his academia showed. He was different. He worked around New England for years doing odd jobs and yet suffering through several relationships. After a physical examination and psychological test failed to bring any solution to the situation, the Warrens were finally called in. The Warrens were gaining popularity as a paranormal aid and had already worked on several cases. The activity ranged from low-level poltergeist activity to this aggressive physical demonic attack stuff. Apparently one night while trying to recite the Hail Mary to make the possession stop, Maurice became so violent he even tried to choke out his own wife. The Warrens made the decision that this was not a normal haunting but a possession and would need the help from Bishop Robert McKenna, who agreed to perform an exorcism. After examining Maurice, Bishop McKenna performed the ritual right away. Dude, that's terrifying. He's just staring off like a reptile. Apparently the demon identified itself simply as, quote, "I am what I am." And also, of course, invoking the kingdom, referring to demons from the legions of evil type stuff. The exorcism was successful, thank God. A young French-Canadian character appears in The Nun, and is supposedly loosely based on the real Maurice, who the Warrens actually think might have been possessed by the devil himself. What do you think?
Number 5 on this list is the Shadow Doll. Whatever demon took up residence in this evil-looking doll was not one that the Warrens were too fond of. Scare Street says, the Warrens files do not state why this horrible doll was created in the first place. However, they do state that it was used in satanic rituals and it was created by black magic using human and animal bones. It's rumored that if a picture were to be taken of the doll, it would project itself into the dreams of the person who dared to look at it in the eye. However, it is not only a simple dream. The dream would be so intensely nightmarish that the victims would either suffer from a heart attack or forever be frightened of sleep because of the horrifying looking doll. The files even state that there were a few deaths caused by it. The shadow doll was later found in an antique shop and oddly enough, a couple purchased it. After the purchase, the couple began to encounter the eeriest of nightmares. They later found out that they were experiencing the same nightmares of the cursed doll and that the husband had scratches all over his back and neck, which could only be traced back to the shadow doll. Clearly, this doll and its capabilities was something that the Warrens were very concerned about. It's one thing to be attacked when you're awake and conscious. Let's face it, this happened to the Warrens all the time and they were constantly having to deal with scary demons coming after them. Obviously, this was never a great time, but it was something that they could handle. Getting attacked while you're asleep, though, that's a completely different animal. You are now being haunted in a world where things won't make any sense. A world where this shadow doll can manipulate the physics and do things that they wouldn't be able to do outside of our heads. It also meant for the Warrens that they wouldn't have one another. They were a team and tackled every single one of their demonic foes as a unit. Getting attacked while you're asleep in your brain meant that the other person, even though they would most likely be lying right next to you, they'd have no idea that you're getting attacked and wouldn't be able to do anything to save you. All of this is why the Warrens had to take this doll and bring it to their museum. This was of course after they performed various ceremonies on it to try and extract the demonic presence. Number 3 on this list is the Enfield Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist was a possessive demon who specifically targeted 2 young girls. MovieWeb says, this well-known case formed the subject matter for the Conjuring 2. This case saw the Warrens flying overseas to London, England in order to investigate alleged poltergeist activity in the North London borough of Enfield. Peggy Hodgson, a single parent, had initially called the police after 2 of her 4 children had reported knocking sounds on the walls. Peggy herself claimed to have witnessed furniture moving around with no explanation. This was apparently also corroborated by a police officer visiting the house. Ed and Lorainne Warren were convinced that the events were of supernatural origin and appeared to be predominantly focused around two of Peggy Hodgson's teenage daughters, with the girl seeming at times to apparently levitate off the ground. So like I said, a demon who really enjoyed possessing people. These are some of the most dangerous types of demons because you simply don't know who or what to believe anymore. If you're living in a house that's haunted, then how do you know that your dad, for instance, is who he claims he is? How do I know who to trust? Also, I am just as susceptible to being taken over by this creature, and I can't imagine that that's a great time. It's easy to see why Ed and Lorainne Warren were scared by this demon.